Hi all, welcome to video 2 now. We're still doing the first real topic in the syllabus. It is the operation of an economy. We're going to skip similarities and differences. I explained that before. Okay, so this topic is going to relate to what we produce, decisions about production, who gets what, so exchange and distribution, a little bit about provision of income, which is pretty boring, and the business cycle. So business studies students will be familiar with it. And then the last bit will be a little bit more abstract and difficult, which is the circular flow of income, which really is one of the more important concepts. Okay, so let's get moving. So for an economy to operate, the key part is we're producing something. We're producing either goods or services. Okay, these are pretty simple. Goods, they're tangible, they're transferable, they're things that are made, okay, where you consume them over time. Services, a little bit different. They're actions, they're intangible acts, they're non-transferable, and they must be consumed immediately. It's like a haircut. I can't really transfer a haircut to someone else, though I really wish I did. Okay, so we understand it's production, but we have a problem. Okay, we need to satisfy consumer demands. We want to satisfy, make them happy. And ultimately, we're going to be faced with an economic problem. Okay? We can't have everything. I want all the goods, I want all the services. I want to go get a massage, I want to go get some chicken. But we have the problem at hand. Economic problem, unlimited ones, but we have finite or limited resources. Okay, so what we're going to do, like we said before, is we're going to answer the key economic questions. What are we going to produce? How much are we going to produce? How are we going to do it? Are we going to use labor? And for whom? Who's going to get our goods and services? And to really answer some of these is we need to start bringing it back. We're going to start thinking about production itself. Okay? What are we going to produce with the limited resources to best allocate? So we need to bring it back to the production. And this is really links to business studies, unfortunately. Okay? It's really just a production process. So your inputs, transformation, we have an output. Simple. So our inputs would be our land, our labor, our capital, our enterprise. Okay? So by land, we mean natural resources, our labor, our human resources. By capital, this is a little bit of a tricky one. Okay? We got our money, but it's also our machinery. Now, the reason why we say machinery is normally an investment, okay? And to pay for it, we actually use capital through our financial intermediaries. Now, the last bit is our enterprises, our willingness, our entrepreneurial ability. Now, when I put these all together, okay, jumble them up, transform it, I essentially value add. Okay, so the sum of the parts is worth, or the product is worth more than the sum of its parts. Okay, so putting all these together, we have our goods and services. These are what are produced, okay? Now, in providing land, labor, capital, and enterprise, we get a reward, okay? These are what we'll call the returns on production. So, for land, we'll put it as rent. Okay, so that's the rent we can get from a piece of wood. Okay, how much money we can make out of the nature. It could be just a block of land. That's also an ability for us to generate rent. Okay, it could be fish stocks. I can generate rent from that. We've got labor. That's pretty simple. When you work, you get wages. Now, capital. Bring it back to the explanation that capital is really just money saved that's provided to make our machinery. So money saved, we normally get a return, which is interest. And ultimately, enterprise, whenever we have a business, our goal is to have profit as a return. Okay, so that's pretty simple. Now, there are issues. We have scarcity of these. Okay, we want to value add, but we have limitations in our factors of production, and we'll need to break it down. So first one is land or natural resources. We kind of have limited amounts. Okay, so we're going through issues of environmental degradation, deforestation, depletion of natural resources. That means we're going to have limited amounts due to the negative impacts of what we're doing. We're looking at labor. We're going to be concerned about our quantity. Are we going to have enough people willing to work for us? But also our skill. Okay, so that's our quality. We're going to have well-trained staff. Third one is capital. We're going to be limited by willingness to invest and access capital. There could be issues where we can't access the money itself, there's no savings, or we're just not willing to pay for these upfront capital costs. We're more interested in our short-term benefits. So thinking about these future and current benefits and decisions. Okay? And the last limitation is related to our enterprise. And we're really just thinking about the risk involved. Okay, most businesses actually fail. So there is something we need to consider there. Okay, so we just need to go through our factors of production and our rewards. So land, it's natural resources, we get rent from it. Okay, so that's the money earned on the productive use. For labor, we pay wages. It can be in the form of salary, hourly wage, bonuses, the whole shebang. You get it. Okay? Now, interest and capital. Capital, funded by savings. They go to a financial intermediary. Okay? So your money, when you save it, goes to a bank. They don't just keep your money, they lend your money to allow people to invest. And the last bit is the willingness. And the ultimate goal is profit. Okay, all businesses want profit. Now, we're going to move into the idea of distribution. Who gets what? Okay, we've looked at questions related to our first three economic questions, what to produce, okay, and that's going to be determined by society. How much to produce? It's going to be determined by demand and resource availability. How to produce is going to be determined by our state of technology, our capital available, the cost of our different resources, labor to capital. Okay, now we're going to be looking at distribution, who gets what, for whom to distribute it to. And unfortunately, in a capitalist free market economy, it's all about our incomes. Okay, now income is the reward to our factors of production. So you're going to hear this a lot. It's a lot of repetition. Land, labor, capital, enterprise, rent, wages, interest, profit. Okay? Now, these are all sources of income. And if you look at the graph, most of our income in society, so this big chunk here is wages and salary. That's from like all people working. Some of you might already work. Now, the second biggest chunk is mainly through businesses. Okay, so that's our profit. But it's also our interest, the rent, which most businesses generate, and dividends. These are normally from people who own capital, who own businesses. Now, third one is government welfare. Okay, this is 10%. This is for all the people who can't work, who are looking for a job, who may be on a pension, they're old or they're disabled. Okay, this actually makes up about 33% of all government spending. But it provides what we call a safety net. And then we have other forms of income, 5%. We won't, for the purpose of the syllabus, cover that. It's not really that important. Okay, so through all these sources of income, we're going to start thinking about how we're going to allocate it. Okay, and there's different ways or reasons why people earn more money than others. Okay, so we're actually going to break it down. We have different reasons why someone like, unfortunately, Mr. Brown earning more money than me. First one could be education, training, qualifications, skills, and experience. So education, training, skills, experience. Okay, that's one of the major factors. Someone like Mr. Brown has more experience than me, he might have more skills than me, and that's why he earns a greater income. Second one is types of employment. So if you're employed part-time, obviously you're not going to get paid as much as someone working full-time. Okay, then we also have opportunities to participate in the job market. So some of us might not be able to get a job. Unfortunately, it's part of life. You can be really experienced, you can be really skilled and still struggle to get a job. All of these three will determine how much of this pie we get, okay? How much money we get. And the more we have in income, the more we can buy. It's pretty simple. It's not rocket science. Okay, so without money, that's determined by these three factors, we are able to now exchange. Okay, that's where we swap our income for goods and services. That's pretty simple. That's simple enough. Now, the idea of prices themselves are an arbitrator. Like, we've gone beyond the idea of bartering and swapping things. Now we use a common currency to swap and trade goods and services, so we can own it. We have private property rights on everything we own. Okay, I as an individual have exclusive rights of all my goods. I can exchange it, okay, and sell it and transfer it, but I will get a return for the sale. Now, the prices themselves do give us an idea in making decisions. Okay, so first key idea is how prices can actually match our supply and demand. Okay, we're actually going to get to supply and demand down the track, but the idea here is prices actually allow us to determine how much we're going to produce, okay, and how much society wants. The second key idea is that the prices can ration supply. Okay, so if I don't have many goods and services, we can increase the price to prevent it getting wasted. So this is quite a big idea in terms of protecting the natural environment. We increase prices on, say, carbon pollution, or on trees, or on fuel, and that will try to protect the natural environment. Third one is to prevent wastage. Okay, so if we want to prevent wasting resources, okay, we can send these price signals. We can say, this is expensive. That's going to give you an indication not to really use much of this resource. It's like using saffron when you're cooking. It's like 20,000 bucks a kilo. That's a big indication for how we behave. And last one is a signaling device. It's very limited to prevent wastage. Prices signal to us how we should behave. Okay, if something's very expensive, we may not use a lot of it. If it's cheap, we actually may use quite a lot of it. Okay, so that's pretty simple in terms of distribution exchange. Next topic, we're looking at the business cycle. Okay, general definition. We're looking at fluctuations. The market doesn't stay the same all the time. We can see it right now. If you look at our markets right now, they're gone ape shit. They're going up and down. You got this whole coronavirus, which is impacting on our markets. It's impacting how much we produce. It's impacting all of our economic activity. It's one of our global factors. We could have domestic factors, okay? It could be our workforce is sick, or it's not skilled, or we refuse to work. And all these will have an impact on our living standards, how we live, our employment, whether we have more unemployed or not. The amount we produce, our income at the end of the day, and prices for goods and services. Okay, so whenever we're analyzing things in economics, we need to be looking at how it impacts on certain indicators. Now, if you've ever had Miss Capelja, you might have heard the term Cupid, you might have heard the term cutie pies. We're looking at a multitude of different indicators, but for the purpose of this section of the syllabus, we only need to look at 5. Okay? So, we're going to have our business cycle. You might have seen it being drawn before. On our y-axis, we have our GDP, or our output. Now, you might experience a business cycle or economic cycle, depending on the subject that you're in, which is about percentage change, or you might have one that's about total GDP output. Okay, so for purpose of this, I'm doing GDP. It's just the total output. We always have 0, and on our x-axis we have time. So over time, our GDP will fluctuate. So I'm going to use a different color. And what we're going to experience is we're going to have upswings, downswings, upswings, downswings. But generally, there's a trend for our economies to experience growth over time. Okay? We may have weaker periods, such as here, and we will call these weak periods a downswing or a contraction. Either one is fine. We may have periods of an upswing or an expansion. But the general trend in purple is that we're experiencing increases in GDP growth over time. And we can see this in Australia's economy. We aim for 2 to 3%. Okay? In Australia, we aim for 2 to 3%. Countries like China were experiencing 15%, 20% growth. In the last 2 years, it's been about 5-6%. Okay, so generally, we're actually increasing, and very rarely we actually have contractions. And when we have 2 consecutive quarters or half a year of contractions, what we call that is a recession. Okay? Recession, or not a bust, but it's called a trough. Okay, you can use that term at the very bottom point. But when we're at the really top, we're at absolute productivity, we're going to have a term called peak or a boom. Because it's like essentially a peak of a mountain. Okay, so a few good examples of a recession. 2008 GFC. Okay, global markets crashed. There was a massive housing bubble. People were shorting the market. Possibly now in 2020, due to the coronavirus, there's major projections that our economy is all going to contract. So financial managers, our governments have been freaking out essentially and lowering interest rates to encourage us to spend and essentially increase the level of GDP output. Okay? Now, with these, there are certain characteristics with all these stages. Okay, so we're going to look at a few key areas and how the business cycle will impact it, how there's different characteristics in each of these upswing and downswing phases, or expansion, contraction. So living standards, a little bit of year 10 geo, we measure in what we call HDI, or really it's ability to buy stuff. Okay, our ability to engage in the market and buy goods and services. So in an upswing period, we have more economic activity, which means we have lower levels of unemployment. More people are working. Generally, what this will mean is increased incomes. And when everyone has more money, okay, we're producing more. So output has increased. Our unemployment has decreased. Our incomes have increased. That leads to increases in expenditure. So we can now buy more. Okay, and that should make us happy. The issue is, conversely, when there's a downswing. So what could possibly happen in the next 6 months is economic activity will decline. Okay? Firms won't make as many goods and services anymore. No one has the money. So we decrease our output. When we decrease our output, we don't need as much labor, so unemployment increases. And essentially, our expenditure or our consumption decreases. Therefore, we buy less and our living standards will decline. Okay, I think that's pretty simple. Now, second one, employment. This one's a bit more direct. Okay, upswing. There's more activity, people happy, people confident. It's increase in expenditure. Increase output. And when you need more output, therefore, increase jobs or lower unemployment. We can say exact opposite for a downswing. Production. We'll increase expenditure. Okay? Everyone's happy, everyone's spending. Consumer confidence is high. We're not scared we'll lose our job. Okay, so incomes are increased. That leads to increased output. Now, income is very related because there's one thing you will realize is Y equals E equals O. Income equals to expenditure equals to output. Okay, these three in the middle will essentially link. But I really do want to go to prices. Okay, now prices can change, and we do have a term for that. Inflation. Okay, what inflation means is a sustained increase in the cost of goods and services over a period of time. So, if we do have an upswing, we have increased activity, we have lower unemployment. That means our incomes are increasing. Okay, we're increasing our expenditure. But when everyone wants everyone wants something. Everyone wants the newest PS4. Everyone wants a limited supply. It leads to increase in price. Okay, we call this demand pull inflation or demand inflation. Now, we're going to move on to what we call the circular flow of income, and it's really closely related to the business cycle. Because what happens in a business cycle is really from what happens in our circular flow. Okay, so we're going to start off with a few basic assumptions. We have the two-sector model, and that's made up of two key stakeholders. Okay, we got households and firms. Now, in a two-sector model, these two interact with each other. Households, we provide the resources. Could be like labor, could be capital, it could be land. But firms, they will return to households income. Okay, so that could be rent, wages, interest. Now, businesses will also provide goods and services, don't they? So, the firms will provide an output. And these need to be paid for or consumed through what we call expenditure. So we're going to refer to that equation, Y equals E equals O. We have income equals expenditure equals output. For all the production we make, okay, we're going to consume it all. And we're going to be paying for it with our income that we made. Okay, so the economy is closed. It's in a circular flow. There's no other influences within it. Okay, and for that reason, we kind of try to think of the economy as a big bathtub. Okay, but we're going to start thinking the economy is not growing or contracting as a two-sector model. Okay, it's not going to get any better. It's not going to impact the business cycle. So what we're going to have is what we call the three-sector model. We're going to start introducing other people. Okay, we're going to have the financial sector. This is part of the three-sector model now. And as part of the financial sector, we now have leakages and injections as part of our economy. Okay, so for households, we can either choose to consume or expend. So for households, Y equals C plus S. Okay, they can either consume their money and it goes to businesses, or they can choose to save it. It goes to banks. But when it goes to a bank, it's actually money escaping from the economy. It's what we call a leakage. Okay, the economy is actually getting smaller. The bathtub, the water in the bathtub is escaping. That's why governments, they do want us to spend. They want to encourage us to spend and not save our money, because that actually contracts the economy. Okay? But on the other side, the financial sector provides money for investment. Okay? So on the other side, financial sector can actually inject money into the economy for investment, to build new infrastructure, invest in capital goods and equipment to really achieve long-term benefits. Now, that's only one part. We also have the government sector. Okay? Now, what happens here is the money we make as households and as firms from the bathtub will still escape. This time, it's tax. Okay? No one wants to pay tax. Unfortunately, we pay tax so we can grow the economy in the long run. We can get our private goods. We can get our public goods, we can get things that are beneficial for society. It gives me an income, pays for schools, pays for hospitals, pays for your parks. Okay, so essentially having our government sector, it's a leakage, but it's not that bad of a leakage in the grand scheme of things. Okay? And when the government does take money out, it puts it back in. Okay, so it gives government expenditure. This is in the form of welfare payments, the public goods, collective ones that we talked about. The other way money escapes is if money was to go overseas. So when we pay others for our imports, money escapes. Okay? It escapes out of our bathtub. But when it enters back in, so if we were to sell our goods and we get overseas money, it's an injection. So the tap instead now is on. Okay, so you have a tap and all the water goes back into the economy. Now, essentially, when equilibrium occurs when S plus T plus M equals I plus G plus X. Okay, that is a key equation you need to remember. But our economy can either grow and experience that expansion, or it can contract. So, our expansion occurs when injections exceed leakages. Okay, so when there's more investment than savings, when there's more government than tax, when there's more exports than imports, when these combine exceed leakages combine, that's when the economy is expanding. Now, contraction is the other way around. So when leakages exceed injections. Okay, so this isn't too hard a concept. In an exam, we may give you values for all of these. So savings might equal 90, tax might equal 100, imports might equal 50, investment might equal 120, government sector might equal 100, and overseas might equal 50. And you'll have to essentially determine if the economy is growing, so injections exceed leakages, or the economy is contracting, where leakages exceed injections. So in this case, we have a total of 240 in leakages, but we have a total of 270 injections. So the economy is growing because there's more water entering the bathtub than water escaping. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to you all. And that's it for the second topic.